And that was a little music from the original soundtrack recording, First Position. And joining us on the line, coincidentally, we have the director, Bess Kargman. And good evening and welcome.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Bess.
Hi, Chris.
So we've got Chris, we've got the full creative team here. We are firing on all cylinders.
Yes.
Now, Bess, this is your first film. And the thing that I love is you went back to something that you know very, very well because you studied ballet. And I love it in the press notes it says, and you have the bruises to show for it.
Yep.
So those bruises just don't go away, do they?
Well, I have very strong memories of tying my legs to the posts of my bed to try and stretch while I was sleeping. I kid you not.
Well, it's kind of like the kid in your film. In the very beginning, he shows the BB gun, and then he shows, and this is to stretch your so you can point your feet. Mm-hmm. You did something like that as well?
That device specifically I didn't have, but we made do with other medieval devices. Yes.
Yeah, ballet is a very brutal sport. I mean, it really can, your feet get all tweaked and all that stuff. Now tell me about the process. What led you to making your first film?
Well, I thought maybe to compensate for my lack of years in the industry, at least if I chose a topic that was near and dear to me and I had lived for a number of years, it might compensate for that. Mm-hmm. And I knew that this film hadn't existed before, and it was always a film I wished had been made, and I was sort of tired of waiting for someone else to make it. And I don't mean a competition film, because actually I never competed growing up, and that didn't appeal to me. I mean a film that takes you so far beyond just the stage and the studio, and you really see what it takes to make it as a dancer.
I think that it's beautifully shot. I mean, I really loved your film, and also there was another film, Wim Wenders' Pina. They're like these two really beautiful dance films. Obviously, Pina is about these older professional dancers, but I think what is so impressive about your film, it's not about the competition, but it's about the heart of these kids and what they do, what they go through, and the challenges. And just the spirit, the kid from Colombia who leaves his home and comes to America, and just the struggle, or like the Israeli girl that dances well beyond her age. And then, then you have the family where, the girl is really into it, but her brother isn't. But the mother, it's as if it's the dream for the mother to have them both be ballet stars.
Right.
Tell me about that experience for you growing up. I mean, did you get a lot of pressure to be a ballerina star?
Well, one thing that I knew growing up is that these stereotypes that exist about the dance world, they're not so true. And I thought it would be interesting to disprove them one by one. So you'll meet a stage mother in this film, but you quickly learn that not all stage parents are psycho. And you'll meet, the skinniest of skinny girls, and then you'll see, if I spent 6 hours a day in the studio, I could eat like a linebacker too and still look like a rail. And there are, jocks. These boys, they're straight, they love sports, and yet they're extremely dedicated to ballet. There are so many stereotypes that exist.
Well,
not all ballet dancers are white. Not all ballet dancers are rich.
Well, it is kind of interesting because I used to kind of work with a lot of dancers, and there were some issues of anorexia. I mean, I knew this one girl who struggled with it because she had to keep her weight down. And but yeah, it's so there are those things. But yeah, you talk about these are just kind of like normal kids that have chosen to be dancers, and I like the families that you focus on. I mean, the one father who just supports his son, he doesn't really understand ballet. And, that must be really tough for a kid that age to then go to school, because I'm sure that there's the issue of, being, teased and ridiculed by his friends, Some
boys, they're strong enough in their sense of self to overcome the bullying. Some boys, they decide to homeschool if the bullying gets really bad, and they are so driven to make it as dancers. And unfortunately, some give up. But when you're really, really talented, I feel like you figure out a way to continue because there's no other option. With these kids, what's so incredible about them is there's literally nothing else they want to do. You are so unbelievably inspired because they're mini adults. They're just the most focused, incredibly inspiring individuals. And yet, you know, some of them are 10 years old.
Yeah. What was the process like working with Chris, the composer of the music? And what I find, what you said about that passion, that's all they want to do. Because here you are, and, you know, and some would say against all odds, you know, you put your film together. And then also with Chris, I mean, both of you are kind of at this really the early stages of your career, but I'm sure you've been really working at this for such a long time. And you've created a really an artful documentary. So tell me a little bit about that passion and what the creative process really means to you.
Well, I did not make things easy on Chris, and
You're like the professor. It's the first semester.
I gave him the most crushing deadlines. We had just gotten into the Toronto International Film Festival, which was a dream come true to be selected for that festival. And honestly, I didn't expect that. So I basically said to Chris, let's go in the studio and pull some all-nighters. And you know what? He did that. There was that terrible hurricane, which everyone was talking about, and Chris and I spent the entire time in his studio working together.
You know, it's funny.
He has the most incredible work ethic, but even more importantly than that, what you have to be very careful about when you're composing is to not manipulate the audience, because audiences are much smarter than we give them credit for, and they become very resentful of what they're watching if they feel like they're being manipulated. And I feel like Chris had this perfect balance between enhancing the scene, getting emotion out of those very tender moments and the drama, but at the same time, it's never heavy-handed, which I think is every director's, you know, worst nightmare, is if the composer comes back with something and it's like Schindler's List and the kid is, you know, it's inappropriate.
He stubbed his toe.
This is a kid's ballet film, and Chris always managed to have that perfect balance.
Well, Chris, what would you like to ask Bess?
Oh, boy.
Something that you've thought about, but you've never asked her about the process in working with her. And Bess, I'm going to throw that back at you, too. What would you like to ask Chris? So, Chris, go ahead and ask her.
You know, I would like to ask Bess, first of all, thank you for, you know, I have about 20 years on Bess, so thank you for making it like we're the same age. I appreciate that.
I mean, Bess sounds like she's like 13. You read very young on the air.
Bess is, she's, I cannot say enough about her as a collaborator, and she's going to be one of my dear friends for the rest of my life, and I hope to work with her 100 more times. But I would love to ask Bess, I know, Bess, we're proud of the whole score, of course. What scene when you watch the movie over and over again, do you, like, musically, do you say, my God, that one, I love, like, you know, what scene sticks out to you is just, you know, your favorite musically?
What part of the film?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's like asking me to choose who my favorite kid is.
Okay.
Sophie's Choice.
There are certain moments that I find very emotional, and there are certain moments that the audience, you know, okay, so there are some tracks in the film that I get emailed on a constant basis from fans asking me who did that, where can they buy that, they're in love with whatever music that was. So, of course, those pieces in the film, especially, you know, the intro to the entire movie is just an amazing song. I love those because those get the audience, you know, that gets the audience amped up. But I think that Chris and I struggled with this one piece in the film. Michaela is dancing to a particular song, and we decided to strip that song out and do something that was a lot more powerful.
Yeah.
And everyone who comments on her dancing says that they got so emotional and then so happy with the way that song. It was this perfect blend with her dancing. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I do, and
Taylor at the finals.
And Bess, the one when we were talking before about collaboration, the one that this still strikes me is, I remember just how we worked in the studio, is Bess has in the film these interstitials, which are these kinds of montage segments of the rigors of dancing and different ones. But that one scene where there's you're seeing all the injuries and all the stuff they have to deal with, and musically, I had kind of constructed that. How it was, and Bess came in and she really loved it, but she had some really specific notes on moving some of the phrases on different places, and it just got better and better. And it was so beautiful to see that relationship work that well.
So, Bess, what would you ask Chris after the process?
I want to ask Chris how so Chris has scored a ton of films, and I want to ask him, how does he deal with the challenge of a director being very connected and having trouble detaching from the temp music. Oftentimes, the director.
It's temp. I've talked to composers, and they call it temp death.
Yeah. Well. Okay. Well,
did that happen here?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a necessity to temp because as they're refining the cut, and I mean, I'll give the short answer. I mean, it's not always bad, but where it can become problematic is, and what I would say to a director is, we have to create something unique for your film. This is not about me giving you a rip-off of a score of another film. It's fine, but what I would do is, what I would say, and I've said to directors is, tell me specifically about the temp. What one thing is it doing that you love? And once you can get through that, I can still do that in my own way. So, you kind of slowly, right? I mean, I don't know. It's not like ripping a Band-Aid off quick from a wound. I go slowly and we talk about the trust. And then once you start trusting each other more, you realize that something really beautifully original is happening.
You mentioned that you're older than her. And was there any point where you're thinking, just trust me? Just let it go. You hired me because of my ability.
Yeah, I
just go with it.
I mean, ultimately, I do feel like not from the age perspective, because I just feel like my whole thing is, every director, I honor and trust them so much that they know what that film is, and I need that guidance. Every composer needs that guidance because we don't want to stray either. But I'm trying to make them as comfortable with me, and I'm trying to let them enjoy this process because. A composer is brought in at the end of this long process, and I really look at it as the last big creative input that a director can have. And with that, it carries a lot of weight. And, all the things that you might have gotten up to this point, maybe there was a certain shot you didn't get or a certain thing you didn't want, and you want the music now to help you there. That's a big amount of pressure to put on a composer and a big amount of pressure to put on that collaboration. So I always understand that, and I try to have a really... look at it as, a partnership, and I know what those stakes are like. And I could only imagine if I was a director and I handed somebody something and said, please give me exactly what I want that will help this film. I mean, that's what they're doing.
Well, listen, congratulations on First Position, Chris, beautiful score, and
Thank
Bess, what an excellent job, and it's very, very heartfelt, and it's beautifully shot. And once again, the name is First Position, and it's just a really, really beautiful journey. And thank you for that inside look into what it means to go through the process of being a dancer and competing in this international competition. And we've been talking with Chris Hajian and Bess Kargman. And best of luck with First Position. Thanks, Bess.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
And we're going to close out with another track. This is track 19. It's the epilogue. Is that a good one?
Yeah.
All right.